Senator Cruz told the Attorney General you should be prosecuted.
Yeah. I'd have to laugh at that. I should be prosecuted. What happened on January 6th, Senator?
Do you think that this is about making you a scapegoat to deflect from President Trump?
Of course. You have to be asleep not to figure that one out.
Well, there are a lot of Republican senators taking aim at this. I mean,
that's okay. I'm just going to do my job. And I'm going to be saving lives, and they're going to be lying.
It seems another layer of danger to play politics around matters of life and death.
Right, exactly. And to me, that's unbelievably bad, because all I want to do is save people's lives. I mean, anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes that there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science, because I represent science. That's dangerous. To me, that's more dangerous than the slings and the arrows that get thrown at me. And if you damage science, you are doing something very detrimental to society long after I leave.
I've come around to the fact that the only response to the bullshit spewed by Ted Cruz is exactly the response given by Dr. Fauci, which is just to laugh. Here, Dr. Fauci is swatting down the threat of prosecution that was floated by Ted Cruz during a hearing with the Attorney General.
This is the Department of Justice investigating Dr. Fauci for lying to Congress, and will you appoint a special prosecutor to do so?
I'm going to say again, the memorandum that I issued is not partisan in any way. It has nothing to do with what I agree with or I don't agree with. I don't care whether the threats of violence come from the left or the right.
Could you answer
now,
the question I asked?
The second question, we don't comment on criminal investigations or other investigations.
Well, amazingly, when it's the political enemies of the administration, you comment loudly in a memo.
And just so we're crystal clear, there is one reason and only one reason for these Republicans to lob these threats of prosecution to the nation's premier immunologist, and that is to deflect the blame away from Trump for allowing this virus to explode throughout the country. That's all. It's not rocket science. It's been the same excuse since day one. Republicans need a boogeyman to point to, because without one, it's clear that the person who bears responsibility for failing to manage this virus was their deity. It was the guy who fomented literal protests against stay-at-home orders. It was the guy who triumphantly took off his mask while still infected with COVID. It was the guy who spouted scientific misinformation at his press briefings daily while he cosplayed as a doctor. It was the guy who oversaw the most cases and deaths in the world, despite the fact that he had ample time and resources and money to prepare. It is so aggressively, blatantly obvious who's to blame here, and so Republicans' only hope is to flood the zone with attacks against any other high-profile figure they could find, because their only priority is protecting Donald Trump, because that is literally all the Republican Party stands for. And by the way, this strategy of finding a boogeyman to attack is so obvious that even Dr. Fauci is able to identify it right there on national TV. And that's owed in part to the fact that the steps they took to land on Fauci were obvious, but in part too because this is what they've always done. During the entirety of Trump's presidency, there is a reason why Republicans and Fox News and Trump himself continued to attack Hillary Clinton, even years after the election was over. It's because the only way they survive is if there's always a boogeyman handy to deflect the blame away from their own incompetence. I mean, you can still go to a Trump rally in 2021 somewhere and hear lock her up chants about Hillary. Republicans know that if they can train your attention on their boogeyman, then you'll be too distracted to focus on them. They are banking on their supporters being too stupid to realize that they're being distracted by people basically saying, "What's that shiny thing over there?" So look, at the end of the day, behind all of the politicization of public health, just remember, between Ted Cruz and Dr. Fauci, only one of these men helped found a cure for vasculitis. Only one of these men helped lead us through the AIDS epidemic of the 80s. Only one of these men got us through H1N1 and SARS and West Nile and Ebola and Zika and now coronavirus. Only one of these men has dedicated his entire life to public health. The other guy grovels at the feet of the man who called his wife ugly. The only response to Ted Cruz even being mentioned in the same sentence as Dr. Fauci is the one that Dr. Fauci himself just offered up, and that is just to laugh. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.